In the heart of Dallas, Texas, Emma Williams, a 28-year-old nurse, navigated her days with a blend of compassion and resilience. Her life intertwined deeply with her high school sweetheart, Michael, a testament to enduring love and shared dreams. Michael, a 30-year-old accountant, shared a similar commitment to their relationship, which had blossomed since their teenage years at a local Dallas high school. Their story was one of immediate connection, a classic tale of high school sweethearts who never drifted apart. Emma often reminisced about their first meeting at a school basketball game where Michael cheered her on from the stands. "Remember how you used to shout my name so loudly everyone else seemed to fade away?" Emma chuckled as they sat in their cozy living room surrounded by mementos of their shared history. Michael smiled, taking her hand. "How could I forget? I knew then you'd be my forever." Their conversations often dipped into these pools of memory, reinforcing the bonds they had formed over the years. As they grew together, their aspirations did as well. Emma pursued nursing with a passion for helping others, while Michael found his calling in numbers, working his way up in a local finance firm. Their evenings were filled with shared dreams of a future family, discussing how they would raise their children with love and laughter in a home filled with happiness. "The dream of us watching our kids play in the backyard is what I want most," Emma would say, her eyes bright with the picture of a perfect future. Michael, always supportive, shared her vision, and together they embarked on the journey to parenthood, unaware of the challenges ahead. Years passed with attempts to conceive. Each negative test weighed on their perfect dream. It was a silent struggle, one that they bore together until a visit to a specialist laid bare the truth. Michael had fertility issues. "It's okay," Emma reassured him as they processed the news. "We'll figure this out together." Determined, they turned to artificial insemination, a beacon of hope in their quest for a family. The procedure was a testament to their resilience, choosing to face the medical challenges with optimism. "This could be it," Michael said, squeezing her hand as they sat in the sterile clinic room waiting for the insemination to be performed. Emma, ever the optimist, smiled back. "Whatever happens, we have each other, and that's more than enough." Their dialogue in the clinic was a mixture of hopeful whispers and laughter, a balance to the clinical coldness around them. As they left the clinic that day, walking under the vast Texas sky, their conversation turned to the future, filled with hope and anticipation. "Let's just keep believing," Emma said as they walked hand in hand, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As dusk settled over Dallas, the city's skyline lit up in a mosaic of lights, casting a warm glow through the windows of Emma and Michael's home. Exhausted yet exhilarated from their day at the clinic, they found solace in the familiar comfort of their living room. Nestled together on the couch, Emma rested her head on Michael's shoulder, their hands intertwined. "You know," Emma started softly, her voice a reflective whisper, "from those high school hallways to now, it's been quite the journey with you." Michael smiled, his eyes mirroring the affection in hers. "Every step, every challenge was worth it because it was with you," he replied. They spent hours just like that, reminiscing about their prom night mishaps, their first trip together to the coast, and the countless quiet evenings just like this one, filled with dreams and gentle laughter. The next morning, the rhythm of daily life resumed. Emma returned to the hospital, her steps a bit more cautious, her mind preoccupied with the potential new life stirring within her. She moved through her nursing duties with a gentle touch, her own condition making her even more empathetic towards her patients. Michael, back at his office, found himself distracted, his thoughts frequently drifting to Emma. He sent her text messages throughout the day, each one a small token of his care. "How are you feeling today? Remember to take it easy," one read, bringing a smile to Emma's face during a busy shift. Weeks passed in a similar pattern, each day a blend of routine and quiet anticipation. But soon, Emma began to notice changes, subtle at first, then undeniable. A persistent nausea took hold, and with each passing day, her suspicion grew. Could it be? The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. One morning, with her heart pounding and hands trembling, Emma took a pregnancy test at home. The minutes waiting for the result felt like hours, each second heavy with possibility. When she finally looked, the positive sign was clear as day. She was pregnant. The insemination had worked. Overwhelmed with emotion, Emma sat wrapped in joyous disbelief until reality snapped her back. Today was the day she would share this miraculous news with Michael. She planned everything perfectly, preparing a small celebration just for the two of them at home. That evening, when Michael walked through the door, his face weary from the day's work, he was met not by the usual quiet of their living room, but by Emma, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears of joy. "Michael, we did it," she whispered, handing him the positive pregnancy test. For a moment, Michael stood frozen. Then joy, pure and radiant, spread across his face. He wrapped Emma in a tight embrace, laughter and tears mingling between them. "Really? Are we really going to be parents?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Emma nodded, her own laughter bubbling up. "Yes, but I thought we could go to the doctor tomorrow just to be sure, to confirm it officially." Michael agreed immediately, his practical nature tempering their joy with the need for certainty. "Let's do that. I want to be absolutely sure before we start planning anything." That night, they went to bed with hearts full of hope, the challenges of the past fading into a bright, promising future. As they lay in darkness, the quiet buzz of their shared dream filled the space around them, a dream that was slowly, beautifully becoming a reality. The morning after their joyful discovery, Michael woke up early, his heart still brimming with happiness from the life-changing news. With quiet enthusiasm, he slipped out of bed to prepare a surprise for Emma, breakfast in bed. He carefully arranged her favorite breakfast on a tray: scrambled eggs, fresh strawberries, and a warm croissant, with a cup of decaffeinated coffee, taking extra care to make everything perfect. When he returned, Emma was just waking up, stretching softly under the covers. Her eyes lit up with delight as Michael entered, the tray in his hands broadcasting his loving intentions. "What's all this?" she exclaimed, her smile wide and genuine. "Just a little something to start our big day, right?" Michael replied, setting the tray across her lap and planting a soft kiss on her forehead. They ate together, chatting about names for the baby, their hopes for the future, and how they envisioned their life as parents. Each shared vision brought them closer, weaving their dreams into the fabric of their reality. After breakfast, they got ready and left for the clinic. The car ride was filled with reflection and emotion as they revisited the hurdles they had overcome to reach this hopeful point. Michael reached over to squeeze Emma's hand, his eyes meeting hers in a silent promise of continual support. "No matter what happens, we're in this together," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Arriving at the clinic, they found themselves among a small crowd of expectant mothers, each at different stages of life but united by the common thread of potential motherhood. The waiting room was a low hum of conversations, with couples and single women all sharing stories and experiences. Emma and Michael took their seats, quietly observing and occasionally joining in the chatter around them. One conversation in particular caught Emma's attention. A young woman sitting alone shared her story with a nearby couple. "He just left," she said, her voice a mixture of resilience and sorrow. "Said he wasn't ready to be a father, so it looks like I'm doing this on my own." Emma's heart clenched at the woman's words, and she instinctively looked over at Michael. His presence, his unwavering support, felt like a beacon in that moment. Michael, feeling her gaze, turned to look at her, reading the gratitude in her eyes. He reached out, taking her hand in his and whispered, "I'm here, Emma, no matter what." Moved by the conversation and their own intertwined hands, Emma felt a surge of gratitude for the partnership she had with Michael. Unlike the woman's story of abandonment, she had Michael, who was ready to face not only the joys but also the challenges of parenthood with her. This realization deepened her appreciation for him, reinforcing the strength of their bond as they awaited their turn to see the doctor. As their names were finally called, they rose together, a unified front, ready to face whatever news awaited them, their hearts full of hope and their hands clasped tightly. The clinic's atmosphere was thick with anticipation as Emma and Michael waited for the results of the pregnancy test. Every passing minute seemed to stretch longer, each tick of the clock resonating like a drumbeat in their tense hearts. Finally, the doctor returned, a smile playing on her lips, a smile that spoke volumes before words even left her mouth. "Congratulations, Emma, Michael," "The test is positive. You're going to be parents," she announced. Emma's breath hitched in her throat, tears of joy welling up in her eyes as she turned to Michael, who was already beaming. The anxiety that had clouded their morning dissipated instantly, replaced by a radiant, overwhelming happiness. They embraced tightly, their hearts swelling with the promise of the new life they would soon welcome. A few weeks later, still riding the high of their confirmed pregnancy, Emma and Michael returned to the clinic for the first ultrasound. They held hands, their fingers intertwined with nervous excitement as the ultrasound technician prepared the equipment. As the cool gel spread over Emma's belly and the wand began to glide across, the screen flickered to life, revealing not one, not two, but 3 distinct heartbeats. "You're having triplets," the technician said, her voice a mixture of congratulations and caution. The news struck Emma and Michael like a bolt from the blue. Triplets. The screen displayed 3 tiny lives, each heartbeat a rapid drumroll that echoed through the room. Their joy was palpable, but it was quickly tempered by a surge of practical concerns. 3 babies meant 3 times the responsibility, 3 times the care, and certainly 3 times the love. The drive home was filled with a buzz of excited conversation mixed with bouts of contemplative silence. 3? Michael, can you believe it? Emma murmured, still in disbelief. "We'll manage, Emma. We've handled everything else together. We'll handle this too," Michael replied, his voice steady but his mind racing with the logistics of expanding their family so significantly at once. As the weeks turned into months, Emma's belly grew, and so did their anticipation. The nursery, originally planned to accommodate 1, was redesigned for 3. Every evening, Michael would read stories aloud, one hand on Emma's stomach, feeling the gentle kicks of their unborn children. These moments became their sanctuary, a time of connection, not just between them, but with the tiny beings they were eager to meet. The due date approached swiftly, and with it grew a mixture of excitement and the natural fears of impending parenthood, magnified by 3. Emma and Michael prepared meticulously, attending natal classes, reading up on triplets, and adjusting their lives for the monumental change on the horizon. But as the saying goes, even the best-laid plans often go awry. Emma and Michael, caught up in their dreams and preparations, remained blissfully unaware of the challenges that would soon test the strength of their bond and their readiness for the unexpected. They knew their lives were about to change forever, but what lay ahead was beyond anything they could have imagined. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, the reality of birthing triplets became more imminent, underscoring the need for careful medical supervision. During one of their routine prenatal visits, the doctor discussed the logistics of delivery with Emma and Michael. Given the complexities associated with a triplet pregnancy, the doctor recommended scheduling a cesarean section to minimize risks for both Emma and the babies. Sitting in the softly lit office, Emma listened intently as the doctor explained the procedure. "We need to plan for a cesarean to ensure the safest delivery possible for you and your babies," the doctor advised, her tone both reassuring and firm. She laid out the reasons, noting the positioning of the babies and the potential for premature labor, which was common in multiple births. Michael took Emma's hand, squeezing it gently as they both nodded their understanding. The doctor then proposed potential dates, flipping through her calendar to find a suitable window. After a brief consultation, a date was set, only 3 weeks away. It was close enough to seem real, yet far enough to stir a whirlwind of emotions in the soon-to-be parents. As they left the clinic, the weight of the scheduled date hung between them, a tangible reminder of the rapidly approaching change to their lives. The drive home was quieter than usual, each lost in their own thoughts, mentally preparing for what was to come. The once distant future of their parenthood was now marked clearly on the calendar, counting down the days. Back home, the nursery, once a project of anticipation, now stood ready and waiting. A cozy haven in pastel colors with 3 small cribs lined side by side. As Emma and Michael stood at the doorway, looking in, the room seemed to echo back their mixed feelings of excitement and nervousness. The days that followed were a blur of activity and preparation. Michael meticulously checked and rechecked their hospital bags, ensuring everything Emma and the babies might need was packed and ready. Meanwhile, Emma, growing more physically tired but emotionally resilient, spent long hours resting, often feeling the gentle, reassuring kicks of their babies. Each night, as they lay in bed, the couple would talk about their hopes and fears. "It's almost time," Emma would say, a hint of apprehension in her voice. Michael, ever the optimist, responded with comforting words. "We're ready, Emma. Everything's going to be okay." Despite his reassurances, the looming date of the cesarean section brought with it an escalating sense of apprehension. It was a mix of fear of the unknown and the natural anxiety of first-time parents facing the monumental task of welcoming not one, but 3 new lives into their world. The morning dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the tumult of emotions churning in Michael and Emma's hearts. Today was the day they would meet their triplets, the day their lives would change forever. As they drove to the hospital, the early sunlight seemed to bless their new beginning, filling the car with a warm glow. Upon arrival at the hospital, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Emma, prepped and ready on the operating table, felt a surreal calm wash over her as the medical team bustled around, preparing for the cesarean section. Michael, clad in a sterile gown and mask, stood by her side, his hand a steady presence in hers, his heart racing with every beat, his mind swirling with visions of their soon-to-be expanded family. As the doctors began the procedure, the room was filled with clinical precision. Emma, affected by the anesthesia, felt detached, her mind foggy yet acutely aware of the gravity of the moment. Michael squeezed her hand, trying to anchor her with his presence, his own heart thumping loudly against his chest. Then, the moment they had been waiting for arrived. The first cries of their newborn pierced the sterile silence of the operating room. Relief washed over Michael momentarily until the doctor lifted the baby for him to see. The room fell into a heavy, stunned silence, the kind that suffocates. The baby unmistakably had black skin. Michael stood frozen, his mind unable to reconcile the sight before his eyes with the reality he had envisioned. Confusion clouded his expression, his joy turning to shock, then to profound bewilderment. Emma, groggy and disoriented, sensed the shift in the atmosphere but couldn't see clearly. "Michael, what's wrong?" Her voice was weak, tinged with fear. Michael couldn't respond, his thoughts a whirlwind of disbelief and denial. How could this be? He and Emma both had white skin, the lineage clear and undisputed. The silence in the room was oppressive, broken only by the soft murmur of the medical staff and the cries of their newborn. The doctor, sensing the tension, quickly wrapped the baby and handed him to the nursing staff before turning to address the next part of the procedure. 2 more babies were yet to be born, and the room tensed anew with each passing second. In the tense quiet of the operating room, the world seemed to pause for Michael as the second baby was carefully lifted by the medical staff. His heart, already gripped by confusion and disbelief from the first child's unexpected appearance, sank further as the cries of the second newborn filled the air, echoing the first. Michael's gaze fixed on another baby with unmistakably black skin. The sight cemented a horrifying suspicion in his mind, and his distress transformed into anger. Emma, still under the influence of anesthesia and the physical strain of the surgery, was barely conscious, her mind foggy and her senses dull. She could sense the tension, the shifts in the room, but Michael's reaction was a distorted blur to her. "Michael, what's wrong? Please talk to me," she pleaded weakly, her voice barely a whisper amid the sterile clinks and shuffles of the operating room. Michael turned towards Emma, his face contorted with a mix of pain and betrayal. "How could you?" he spat out, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Who? Why?" His questions sliced through the air, accusatory and sharp. Emma, bewildered and still struggling to grasp the situation, tried to respond, her words slurring. "Michael, I don't understand." But Michael was beyond listening. The sight of the second child, confirming the inexplicable reality he was unwilling to accept, shattered him. In a fit of rage, he hurled more accusations at Emma, each word laden with the weight of his shattered trust. The medical team, caught off guard, could only watch in dismay as the personal drama unfolded amidst the critical procedures of childbirth. Without waiting for an explanation, Michael stormed out of the operating room. His exit was abrupt, his direction aimless, but driven by an overwhelming need to escape the situation that had turned his joy into despair. The hospital corridors blurred past as he walked, his mind a tumult of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. Back in the operating room, Emma was left in a state of distress, her mind reeling from the anesthesia and the emotional bombshell Michael had dropped. Unable to fully comprehend the situation or defend herself, she felt a deep, gnawing panic set in. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the sterile blue of the surgical drapes as the reality of her situation. A situation as confusing to her as to Michael began to sink in. The medical team, professionally trained to handle physical emergencies, found themselves navigating the delicate balance of completing the delivery while offering what comfort they could to Emma. The atmosphere was heavy with a mix of clinical detachment and human concern. The operating room remained a whirlwind of activity as the medical team focused on delivering the third baby amid the chaos of emotions and medical procedures. The final cries of the newborn echoed those of the first two. Another child with black skin was brought into the world. The consistency in the appearance of all three babies only deepened the mystery and Emma's distress. As the doctors completed the cesarean section, their professional demeanor provided a calm amid the storm of Emma's personal turmoil. Once the procedure was over, they swiftly moved Emma to a recovery room, ensuring her physical well-being while being acutely aware of her emotional fragility. Meanwhile, the hospital staff, recognizing the gravity of the situation and Emma's need for support, contacted her mother, Linda. Upon receiving the call, Linda rushed to the hospital, her mind filled with worry and confusion over the sudden request and the cryptic details provided. When Linda arrived, she found Emma awake, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. The sight of her daughter in such a state was heart-wrenching. She quickly approached, taking Emma's hand, her presence a silent pillar of strength. "Emma, honey, what happened? The hospital called me, but they wouldn't say much over the phone," Linda asked gently, trying to bridge the gap of understanding. Emma looked at her mother, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mom, I don't understand any of this," she stammered, her voice shaking. "The babies, they all have black skin. Michael, he left. He was so angry. He just left me here alone." Linda listened in stunned silence, her mind racing to piece together the information. Her heart ached for Emma, seeing her so vulnerable and confused. "Emma, we'll figure this out together. You're not alone," she reassured her daughter, squeezing her hand. As Emma lay there, the weight of her situation began to fully dawn on her. She recalled the conversation with the woman in the clinic, the one who had been abandoned by her partner. Emma remembered how Michael had reassured her then, promising never to leave her side. Yet now, she faced the daunting prospect of raising 3 children on her own, a situation she never imagined she would be in. I always believed Michael and I would do this together. He promised he'd always be here," Emma whispered, her voice laced with betrayal and despair. The irony of her situation was not lost on her. Once a comforting observer to another woman's fear, now a direct participant in a similar nightmare. Linda stayed by Emma's side, offering the comfort of her presence and the assurance of her unwavering support. She helped Emma through the initial shock, discussing practical steps and reassuring her that together they would now navigate this bewildering path. The morning light crept softly through the hospital room window, casting a gentle glow that belied the turmoil of the previous day. Emma, feeling a slight improvement from the surgery, was beginning to grapple mentally with the reality of her new circumstances. Her mother, Linda, had stayed by her side throughout the night, offering the kind of silent strength that only a mother can provide. Their quiet reflection was abruptly shattered by a commotion at the hospital entrance. The sounds were distant at first, but quickly grew into discernible shouts of anger. Linda stood abruptly, moving towards the door to peer out, her instincts on high alert. It was Michael. His voice, once familiar and comforting, now carried a sharp edge of fury that cut through the morning calm. He was visibly distraught, his actions erratic as he pulled suitcases and bags from the car, items that Emma recognized as her own. Between his shouts, Michael hurled accusations and commands. "Emma, Go find the real father of those babies because you're not coming back home." The hospital staff, unprepared for such a scene, scrambled as Michael's temper escalated. Hospital security quickly intervened, approaching Michael with a calm firmness, but he resisted, his anger seeming to feed on itself. The security guards had to physically restrain him, a struggle that drew the attention of patients and staff alike. Back in the room, Emma's heart raced as the sounds of Michael's angry accusations reached her ears. Tears, hot and unbidden, streamed down her face as the last pieces of her life with Michael crumbled away in a public spectacle. Her mother rushed back to her side, wrapping her arms around Emma in a protective embrace. "It's going to be all right, Emma. I'm here." "You're not alone," Linda whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding just outside their temporary sanctuary. But Emma could barely hear her over the ringing in her ears, the sound of her own world fracturing. Michael's outburst was eventually curtailed as the security managed to escort him out of the hospital, his continued shouts echoing down the hallway long after he had disappeared from sight. The aftermath left a palpable tension in the air, a mixture of sympathy and curiosity among the onlookers. Emma, exhausted and heartbroken, clung to her mother. The promise of support was a lifeline in the midst of her despair. Linda, feeling a fierce protective instinct, reassured Emma repeatedly, even as she internally questioned the sudden and severe accusation laid against her daughter. "We'll sort this out, Emma. There's an explanation, and we'll find it. Right now, you need to focus on healing and these beautiful babies." Weeks after the tumultuous events at the hospital, Emma found herself in a new, unexpected chapter of her life. Now living with her mother, Linda, she was slowly learning to navigate the realities of motherhood under circumstances she had never imagined. The days were long, filled with the constant demands of caring for newborn triplets. Yet, every quiet moment, Emma found her mind circling back to the mystery surrounding the birth of her children. In her mother's home, a place of warmth and stability, Emma tried to piece together her fragmented thoughts. The question of the triplets' skin color haunted her, a riddle that seemed to have no logical explanation given the certainty of her fidelity and the assumed genetics of her relationship with Michael. She knew she needed answers, not just for her own peace of mind, but for the future of her children. Determined, she resolved to seek a genetic counselor as soon as she was physically and emotionally able to do so. Meanwhile, Michael was alone in the home he had once shared with Emma, surrounded by the silence of her absence. The shock and anger had faded slightly, replaced now by a deep, pervasive sadness. He found himself reflecting on their entire relationship, from the hopeful days of their youth in high school to the plans they had made for their future together. Each memory was a sharp sting, a reminder of what he felt was Emma's betrayal. Sitting alone in the dim light of the living room, Michael replayed their years together, trying desperately to understand where things might have gone wrong. He remembered the love they shared, the way they supported each other through every challenge until now. The pain was overwhelming, and he often found himself breaking down, tears streaming down his face as he mourned the loss of the life they were supposed to have. "Why?" he would ask aloud to the empty room, his voice choked with emotion. How could this have happened? But no answer came, only the echo of his own voice in the quiet house. Michael's grief was compounded by confusion. He loved Emma deeply. He had always strived to be a good partner, believing they shared everything. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of the apparent infidelity, but because it shook the foundation of what he thought his life was. Now, left to his own devices, Michael felt adrift, grappling with the loss of his relationship and the life he had envisioned. As he looked around at the remnants of their shared past, a photo here, a piece of Emma's clothing there, he realized he needed closure. He needed to confront the situation, not with anger, but with an attempt to understand the reality of what had happened. It was only through understanding that he could hope to move forward, whether that meant reconciling with Emma or finding a way to coexist in this new reality for the sake of their children. Michael's period of reflection had brought him to a critical juncture. He realized that his emotional response, though understandable, had not led him to any clarity. It only served to create a gulf between him and Emma, and potentially between him and his children. It was time, he decided, to approach the situation with reason, to seek explanations rather than casting blame. With a heavy heart but a clear mind, Michael drove to Linda's house, where Emma had been staying. As he parked outside, his heart raced with a mixture of dread and hope. Taking a deep breath, he walked up to the door and rang the bell, his resolve firm. Emma, surprised to see Michael, felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Anger, relief, and a tinge of hope flashed through her. She led him into the living room, where Linda excused herself, giving them space to talk. Sitting across from each other, the air thick with unsaid words, Michael broke the silence. Emma, I've been thinking a lot about everything. I'm here because I want to understand. I need to understand. Emma nodded, her eyes meeting his. I'm glad you're here, Michael. I want you to know everything. There's nothing I've hidden from you. They delved into their past, recounting their shared experiences, their dreams, and the plans that had woven them tightly together over the years. Emma's voice shook as she affirmed her fidelity. I've never been with anyone else, Michael. Not in thought, not in action. I couldn't do that to us. Michael listened, the familiar sincerity in Emma's voice resonating with him. He wanted to believe her, to wipe away the confusion and hurt of the past weeks. He knew her character, her integrity, and part of him recognized the truth in her words. Yet, the reality of their children's appearance was an undeniable challenge to the trust he thought unshakable. The babies, Michael finally said, his voice laced with confusion. They're ours, Emma, but I can't make sense of it. He gestured helplessly, his frustration palpable. Emma reached across, taking his hands in hers. I know, Michael. It doesn't make sense to me either. But they are our children. No matter what, we need to find out why this happened, for them and for us. Michael nodded slowly, the weight of Emma's words settling over him. The conversation, intense and emotional, began to steer towards practical steps they could take. Emma suggested seeking genetic counseling to delve into the medical explanations that might shed light on their children's genetics. As they talked, the barriers built by misunderstandings began to crumble. Michael's anger and confusion softened into a cautious curiosity. He agreed to join Emma for a genetic consultation, hoping that science could illuminate the path forward for their fractured family. After their heartfelt discussion, Michael looked deeply into Emma's eyes, the familiar trust that had once bound them together slowly resurfacing amidst the chaos of recent weeks. He took a deep breath, the weight of his previous actions and assumptions pressing down on him. Emma, I'm so sorry for how I reacted, for not giving you the chance to explain, for not trusting you when you needed me the most, he said, his voice thick with regret. Emma, her eyes glossy with a mixture of sadness and relief, squeezed his hands. Thank you, Michael. That means more than you can know. It's been hard, really hard without you. Her voice was a whisper, a testament to the trials she had endured alone. With the air cleared and forgiveness tentatively extended, Michael and Emma turned their attention to the pressing mystery at hand, the genetics of their children. They agreed that understanding the biological anomalies their family was facing was crucial, not only for their peace of mind, but for the medical and social implications that might affect their children's future. Together, they began to explore every possible angle. They researched online, looking into cases of genetic anomalies, reaching out to medical professionals, and even diving into their family histories for any clue that might have been overlooked. Michael took it upon himself to contact a renowned genetic counselor, scheduling an appointment that they hoped would bring some answers. Their search, however, proved more daunting than expected. The more they read and the more experts they spoke with, the more they realized how complex and unpredictable genetics could be. Discussions about dominant and recessive genes, mutations, and historical genetic markers filled their conversations, each theory more convoluted and speculative than the last. Despite their efforts, conclusive answers eluded them. Each hypothesis led to more questions. Each expert consultation ended with suggestions for further testing and research. The complexity of genetic science, coupled with the rarity of their situation, left them frustrated and often more confused than when they started. But Michael and Emma did not let the lack of answers deter them. Their renewed partnership and shared goal of understanding their children's heritage forged a new bond between them, one that was different from before but no less real. They found comfort in their united front, in the resilience of their family, even in the face of such bewildering circumstances. Back in the comfort of their home, Michael and Emma found themselves in a serene bubble with their 3 babies. The living room was filled with the soft sounds of their children, settling down for a nap on a brightly colored mat. It was a scene filled with domestic bliss, a picture of the family life they had envisioned, now finally a reality despite the recent tumult. As they relaxed together, the sense of peace allowed them to truly appreciate what they had. 3 beautiful, healthy children and a rekindled strength in their relationship. The complexities of their situation hadn't disappeared, but for a moment, they could set aside their quest for answers and just be a family. Amid this tranquil domesticity, Michael's mind wandered back to the myriad conversations and investigations they had embarked upon. None had given them the clarity they sought, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was simpler, perhaps something they had overlooked. As he watched Emma tenderly adjust a blanket around the sleeping triplets, a thought struck him, an idea so obvious yet somehow lost in the emotional chaos of the past weeks. "Emma," Michael began hesitantly, not wanting to disrupt the peace, but compelled by his realization. "Do you remember everything about the insemination process? I mean, the specifics of what the clinic did?" Emma looked up, a bit puzzled by the sudden shift in conversation, but intrigued by the tone of his voice. "Yes, somewhat. Why do you ask?" Michael took a moment to organize his thoughts. "I've been thinking. We struggled for years, and then we turned to the clinic. It was supposed to be a straightforward insemination with my sperm, but what if there was a mistake at the clinic? Something about the procedure or the sample?" The suggestion hung in the air, weighty and significant. Emma's eyes widened as the implication of Michael's words dawned on her. It was a possibility neither of them had considered, yet it made an unsettling amount of sense. "You mean a mix-up or something else with the samples?" Emma's voice was a mix of hope and anxiety. The thought that the clinic could have erred in such a fundamental way was both alarming and a potential answer to the persistent mystery of their children's appearance. "Yes, exactly," Michael replied, feeling a surge of mixed emotions. It was a lead that needed exploring, one that might finally explain the inexplicable. They agreed to visit the clinic the next morning to ask pointed questions and demand transparency about the procedures and materials used during Emma's treatment. This new avenue of inquiry rekindled a sense of purpose, a directive that might lead to the answers they so desperately sought. For the rest of the day, however, they decided to set aside their worries and doubts. They spent the evening quietly in the living room, watching over their children as they slept, each moment a building block in the life they were determined to build together. The peaceful and content expressions on their children's faces served as a reminder of what was truly important: their family, their unity, and their love. The morning sun was barely rising as Emma and Michael made their way to the insemination clinic, each step driven by a mix of hope and trepidation. Their hearts were set on uncovering the truth behind the mysterious genetics of their triplets, believing that somewhere within the clinic's records or procedures lay the answer they desperately needed. Upon arriving, they were met not with understanding or compassion, but with a cold professionalism that bordered on disdain. The clinic staff, upon hearing their purpose, directed them to the clinic manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Harrow, who had been overseeing the clinic's operations for years. Emma and Michael explained their situation in detail, their voices filled with emotion as they recounted the events leading up to and following the birth of their children. They pleaded with Mrs. Harrow to re-examine the records, to consider any possible error, however small, that might have occurred during the insemination process. Mrs. Harrow listened with a stony expression, her lips pursed tightly as she absorbed their story. Once they finished, she responded with a firm, unwavering tone. "I assure you, our clinic adheres to the highest standards. We double-check all samples and procedures. It's simply not possible that an error occurred on our part." Michael, frustration mounting, pressed further. "Please, just check the records again. It's all we ask. Something doesn't add up, and it's not just about us. There are 3 children whose future could be affected by this." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she added, "We need to understand, for our babies. Please help us." Despite their emotional appeal, Mrs. Harrow's stance remained unchanged. I empathize with your situation, she said, her voice devoid of warmth. However, the possibility of a mix-up is non-existent. Our controls are too stringent. If you believe there has been a mistake, I would suggest that perhaps the mistake lies not in our procedures, but elsewhere. Their request for a deeper investigation into their case was unequivocally denied. Feeling a mix of helplessness and indignation, Emma and Michael left the clinic with heavy hearts. The lack of cooperation from the clinic was a severe blow, leaving them with more questions than answers. As they walked back to their car, the weight of the unresolved mystery pressing down on them, Emma leaned against Michael, her tears flowing freely. Michael wrapped an arm around her, his own eyes moist as he stared blankly ahead. What do we do now? Emma murmured, her voice breaking. Michael sighed deeply, a mix of anger and resolve settling in his chest. We find another way, he said firmly. There has to be another way to get the answers we need. Emma and Michael sat in their car outside the clinic, the silence between them heavy with defeat and frustration. Just as Michael turned the key in the ignition, ready to drive away from yet another dead end, a sharp rap on the window startled them both. A woman, her face streaked with tears, gestured frantically for them to roll down the window. Hesitantly, Michael complied, and the woman, gasping for breath between sobs, introduced herself as Mary Ann, a lab technician at the clinic. I was there in the hallway, she stammered, her voice choked with emotion. I heard everything you said to Mrs. Harrow. Emma and Michael exchanged a bewildered look, unsure how to respond. Mary Ann continued, the words tumbling out in a rush. The day of your insemination was very hard for me. It was the anniversary of my son's death. He drowned in a tragic accident a year before. I was distracted, emotional. I shouldn't have been at work. Her confession hung in the air, a poignant echo of their own despair. Mary Ann wiped her eyes, struggling to regain composure. I think I made a mistake. I don't know what exactly, but I feel it. I've felt it ever since that day. And hearing your story, I can't ignore it anymore. Emma, her heart pounding, reached out to touch Mary Ann's shaking hand. What do you think happened, Mary Ann? I'm not sure, Mary Ann admitted, her voice barely a whisper, but I want to help you. I need to make this right, not just for you, but for myself. Give me a few days. I need to look through the records, talk to some people. I'll find something, I promise. Michael, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. How can we trust you? His voice was wary but not unkind. After everything, trust was a commodity they could scarcely afford. Mary Ann met his gaze squarely, her determination clear. Because I'm asking for nothing in return, and I'm risking my job by even talking to you. I just need to know the truth, whether it was my fault or not. Seeing the genuine remorse and resolve in her eyes, Emma nodded slowly. Okay, Mary Ann, we'll wait for your call. With that, Mary Ann gave them a grateful smile, wiped her tears, and hurried back towards the clinic. As she disappeared inside, Emma leaned back in her seat, a spark of hope flickering in her chest. Maybe this is it, Michael. Maybe we're finally going to find out what happened. Michael, his skepticism tempered by the potential of a new lead, simply squeezed Emma's hand in response. Let's hope so, he said quietly. As they drove away from the clinic, the weight of their uncertainty was lifted slightly by the promise of Mary Ann's investigation. For the first time in weeks, they felt that not all doors were closed to them. They had a potential ally, and with her help, the truth might finally surface. In the days that followed, Emma and Michael waited anxiously for any word from Mary Ann, their minds a whirl of possibilities and what-ifs. Each passing day was a test of patience, but with each other's support and the tentative hope Mary Ann had given them, they found the strength to endure the wait. The days following their encounter with Mary Ann were filled with a cautious optimism that had been absent in the weeks prior. Emma and Michael found themselves in a state of suspended anticipation, each day stretching longer as they awaited the call that might change their lives. They tried to maintain a routine for the sake of the triplets, whose innocent laughter and playful antics provided a much-needed distraction from the tension of uncertainty. In the quiet moments after the children were put to bed, Emma and Michael would discuss the possibilities of what Mary Ann might uncover. Each conversation circled back to the same unresolved questions about the clinic's procedures and the integrity of the sample handling. Michael, previously consumed by doubt and hurt, now focused his energy on understanding the technicalities that might have led to their current situation. Emma, meanwhile, found herself grappling with a mix of emotions. There was hope, certainly, that Mary Ann's investigation would vindicate her, but also a deep-seated fear of what it might mean if errors were indeed uncovered. The implications could be far-reaching, not just for their family, but for others who had placed their trust in the clinic's confidence. One evening, as they sat together in the soft glow of the living room lamp, Michael broke the silence. "No matter what happens, we've come through a lot. This situation has tested us in ways we never imagined," he said, reaching for Emma's hand. Emma nodded, squeezing his hand in return. "Yes, it's shown us that we can face anything as long as we do it together. I'm scared, but also I'm hopeful that the truth will bring us some peace." Their bond, forged through the trials of misunderstanding and the shared burden of the unknown, had grown stronger. They knew that the challenges ahead might test them further, but they were now united in their resolve to face them as a team. As the week drew to a close, the awaited call finally came. It was late in the afternoon, a time when the house was usually filled with the sounds of the triplets' play. Emma answered the phone, her heart in her throat, with Michael hovering nearby, a mirror of her anxiety. "Mary Ann?" Emma's voice was tentative, hopeful. "Yes, it's me. I have news," Mary Ann's voice came through, heavy with the weight of her findings. "I've done what I could to dig through the records and talk to my colleagues discreetly. There's something you need to see. Can you come to the clinic tomorrow morning? I can show you then." Emma's breath caught, and she glanced at Michael, who nodded, his expression set in determined lines. "We'll be there." "Thank you, Mary Ann," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As they hung up the phone, the reality of the moment settled over them. Tomorrow could potentially answer all their questions or plunge them into a new depth of uncertainty. That night, as they prepared for bed, the air was thick with unspoken fears and silent prayers for strength. The morning light seemed to carry a sense of renewal as Emma and Michael drove to the clinic, each heartbeat pulsing with a mix of apprehension and hope. Today could bring the closure they desperately needed, or it could open new wounds. Either way, they were ready to face the truth, whatever it might be. Upon their arrival, they found Mary Ann waiting for them, her demeanor serious but tinged with an unmistakable urgency. She led them to a secluded conference room, ensuring privacy for the discussion that was about to unfold. Once seated, Mary Ann took a deep breath, her eyes meeting theirs with a mix of regret and resolve. "I've been going over our procedures and records since we last spoke," she began, her voice steady but showing traces of her inner turmoil. "I found something disturbing. Not just a clerical error, but a mistake that occurred because I was not in the right state of mind that day." Emma and Michael leaned in, their attention fixed on Mary Ann. The room felt heavy with the weight of impending revelations. "I was distraught that day, the anniversary of my son's passing. I shouldn't have been working. I mixed up the samples," Mary Ann confessed, her voice breaking slightly. "Your insemination used a sample that was not labeled for your procedure. It was my mistake, and I take full responsibility for the consequences." The air seemed to thicken around them, the gravity of Mary Ann's admission settling in the room. Michael and Emma exchanged a look, a silent communication of shock and sympathy. Michael found his voice first. "You're saying that the children, they're not genetically mine." His tone was not accusatory but filled with a pained curiosity. Mary Ann nodded, her eyes filled with remorse. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I can't express how sorry I am. This error has changed your lives, and I am here to help you in whatever way I can to rectify this." Emma, feeling a complex storm of relief and dismay, reached out across the table, her gesture one of forgiveness. "Mary Ann, thank you for telling us. We've been in the dark for so long." Mary Ann then outlined the evidence she had gathered, documentation mismatches and lab records that confirmed the mix-up. "I have prepared everything you might need if you decide to take legal action against the clinic, or if you just need it for your peace of mind. I am prepared to support your case fully." The conversation turned towards what steps to take next. Legal actions were discussed, but so were the more immediate concerns about how to explain this to their families and how to adjust to the reality of their situation. Marianne assured them of her ongoing support and cooperation in dealing with the aftermath of her error. As they left the clinic, the weight of the world felt both heavier and lighter. Heavier because of the knowledge of how profoundly a single moment of human frailty could alter lives. Lighter because the truth had finally surfaced, freeing them from the shackles of uncertainty. As they drove away from the clinic, the weight of Marianne's revelations lingered in the car, a silent third presence. Michael, his mind a whirlwind of emotions, finally broke the silence. Emma, what Marianne did, it was a grave mistake, but seeing her today, seeing her remorse, I believe she truly regrets what happened. Emma nodded, her thoughts mirroring his. Yes, I saw it too. It's not just about the mistake. It's about owning up to it, and Marianne has done that. Michael sighed, a long, deep exhale that seemed to release some of the tension he had been carrying. I've been thinking about what it means to be a father. These children are our children. They may not be mine genetically, but that doesn't change how I feel about them. I am their father, and I will continue to be the best father I can. Emma reached over, squeezing his hand, her heart swelling with love and respect for the man beside her. I knew you would say that, she said softly, and that's just one of the many reasons why I love you. Their conversation turned to Marianne. Despite the turmoil her mistake had caused, her willingness to come forward and her efforts to make amends spoke volumes about her character. She could have stayed silent, hidden behind the clinic's policies, but she chose to tell the truth. Emma reflected, yes, and that takes courage. Michael agreed. I forgive her. It doesn't undo the confusion and the pain, but it's a step towards healing for all of us. With this spirit of forgiveness, Michael and Emma decided not only to keep in touch with Marianne, but to include her in their lives. They recognized the void left by the loss of her son, and they saw how their children brought a light to her eyes that had been dimmed by grief. When the triplets' first birthday approached, inviting Marianne was a natural choice. The celebration was a cheerful, lively affair, with family and friends gathered to mark the milestone. Marianne arrived with a mix of nervousness and excitement, bearing gifts and a heart full of gratitude. As the party unfolded, Marianne's interactions with the children were tender and joyful. Watching her with the triplets, Michael and Emma could see a genuine bond forming, a connection fostered by shared trials and mutual forgiveness. Marianne, for her part, found a kind of solace in being part of their lives, a way to channel her nurturing instincts that had been left bereft by her son's passing. Over time, Marianne became a regular visitor at their home, each visit bringing her closer to the family. Her presence was a comfort not only to the children but also to Emma and Michael, who had come to see her as both a friend and an extended family member. As the sun set over a particularly warm evening, the golden light streamed through the windows of Michael and Emma's home, casting a serene glow that enveloped the family. The laughter of the triplets playing in the backyard could be heard, a joyful soundtrack to the peaceful scene inside, where Michael, Emma, and Marianne sat around the kitchen table, sharing a pot of tea. Michael looked around at his family, his heart full. The journey they had embarked upon had been fraught with unexpected challenges and deep soul-searching, but it had brought them to a place of profound understanding and unity. You know, he began, his voice reflective. I used to think that family was all about blood and genetics, but now I know it's much more than that. It's about the bonds we choose to create and the commitments we choose to keep. Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. I couldn't agree more. These little ones, she gestured toward the yard where the triplets were now chasing each other around a tree. They are ours, no matter what. And having Marianne here, it's like our family has grown in ways I never expected, but am so grateful for. Marianne, who had been a quiet presence of support and love, looked at them both with a soft smile. I came here today not just as a friend or someone who made a mistake, but as someone who has been given a second chance to be part of something beautiful. Thank you, both of you, for that gift. As they continued to chat, reflecting on the past and planning for the future, the conversation turned to the lessons they had learned. Forgiveness and understanding were at the forefront, themes that had woven through the fabric of their recent lives and had strengthened them all. It's strange, Marianne mused. How life can take such unexpected turns, leading us to moments and people we might never have encountered otherwise. And through it all, it's love and forgiveness that carry us through. Michael nodded, a look of resolve crossing his features. And it's those moments that define us. We'll keep moving forward, not just for our children, but for ourselves. We're stronger together than we ever were apart. As the evening wore on, they made plans for the future. Vacations, birthdays, and simple everyday moments they now cherished more than ever. Each plan was a testament to their resilience and their renewed commitment to each other. If you like this story, be sure to subscribe to the channel and enjoy the video. And this other video here on the side will surely surprise you. Good session, and until the next video,